start off with my name. I know it's self-centered, but it's my talk. So, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, which means descended from Eastern Europe, and we have a tradition of naming our kids after the dead. And I am named after two amazingly badass women. So, I know, right? And you haven't even heard about them. So on my mom's side, my great-grandmother, Edith, she was, so imagine this like tiny woman, barely scraping 5 feet, chain smoker, like one cigarette off the end of another. And she got tired when she was living in Poland of having to hide in the forest during the pogroms. So she hopped on a boat and went to Canada on her own. And you know, she lived with her sisters, and she was really, really, really good at cards. Like, the men let her play with them. They did not like it when she played with them, when she took all their money. But she used that money to get her brother out of Poland after he survived the Holocaust. And so I'm also named after my grandmother on my dad's side, Eddie. She was also incredible. She survived the Holocaust as well, Auschwitz, and her family was all dead, and she didn't have a high school education, but she was good at sewing. So naturally, her next step was to become an eye surgeon. If any of you want evidence that crazy is genetic. So you may be noticing a theme here. When it came to naming, my parents knew they wanted to name me something starting with an E. But they knew the world I was going to be born into. So they wanted to give me a name where you couldn't tell that I was Jewish. And in warning my mother that I would be saying things like this in my presentation, she wanted me to include that she, when naming me, didn't want to give me a name where people would have an opinion of me before I entered a room. So in this way, she gave me a name where I could pass. The quick and dirty of passing, it basically goes like this. So we live in a society where there are norms that are kind of considered the default. For someone like me with white skin, it's straight and Christian. I am neither. So passing is the ability to present as this norm, to move unseen, to not draw attention, and not to make waves by your very presence of differentness. And there are times where you can choose to pass, and times when you choose not to, and they can be alive. So one of my first experiences was actually here at Oakton, and I joined Pride, and I was tabling for an event we were having, and I'm sitting at this table in this really, really busy part of the school. And I've never been ashamed of being queer, of being bisexual. I never hid it. Sometimes I bring it up, like now. But as I was sitting at this table, I was putting myself out there. I've never done that before, just sitting there in a way that everyone could see that I was outing myself to everyone. And that was a weird and kind of scary experience. People I knew were walking by, and I didn't know how that would change our relationship, if it would. Or people I knew who I didn't want them to walk by and see this. Or professors I had and professors I might have, and I was worried if this would change their opinion of me. The entire time, I'm nervous and uncertain, and then really, annoyed that I'm nervous and uncertain and surprised because, I don't have a problem with being queer. So then time passed, and one day I decided to cut off all my hair for a whole bunch of reasons. And so there was a time I could pass as straight, and that time had passed with the chopping of my hair. And then I did this right before I had a business trip in Minneapolis. So I got to go to an unknown city. I'm walking down the street behind my coworkers who I'm lucky enough to call friends. And they're looking at all the buildings in Minneapolis. I'm walking down the street with my short hair and button down. And I realized I don't know if I'm safe. Is it safe for me to exist in this space looking the way I do? Because before, I could, again, pass unnoticed. People would look over. But I'm walking here, and I don't know if I'll be okay. I mean, I'm fine. Obviously, I'm fine. I made it back. And when we got to the convention center where we were working, across the street there was this big rainbow flag. And that was the biggest relief. And I didn't even realize I was as tense as I was until I felt like I was going to cry. And that's one of the embarrassing stories you get to hear today. So, even though now I can't pass as straight, being Jewish is like, my parents gave me a name where you couldn't tell. And so people don't know unless I tell them. And that comes with its own problems, because we live in a world that's, or at least a society here that's very Christian-centric, for lack of a better term. Like, one of the best examples I have is when people wish me a Merry Christmas. Like, I know it comes from like a really, really, really nice place. But then the decision comes in, do I correct this person? Do I make it awkward and say, actually, I'm Jewish? Do I put the onus on this person and put them on the defensive? Do I want to hurt their feelings? Why is this hurting their feelings? Why do I care about these feelings? Do I be an ass and say, Happy Hanukkah? I mean, usually I just end up smiling and saying, and to you. And it's like, yes, I am one of you. I'm in on the joke. I'm not different. And I hate to keep on picking on Christmas, but, there's a war on. So throughout my life, I've been asked about my Christmas tree, or for the accommodating, my Hanukkah bush. That's not a euphemism. And also, I know, right? Sexuality and gender? Yeah, we're working that in. So, Hanukkah bushes are not a thing. I mean, bless whoever thought of that as a concept for inclusive, not a thing. So, then it comes on me again to say, hi there, I'm Jewish. We don't do that. Thank you for your concern. And then there's always then, usually from the people who say this, comes the Christmas is a secular holiday. It's not. I know that we devoted an entire month to it, but yeah, that's, no. And so, going through this, especially as a kid, it's over and over, like, on repeat, that you don't belong. Like, this isn't for you. We're allowing you to exist. Be thankful. And Merry Christmas. And so once I realized I liked girls and all the mental gymnastics just snapped away one day, it was the same thing over and over again. So there's a saying that you never come out just once. You come out to someone in your family. If that person's a gossip, you come out to your whole family. You come out to friends, and then again, there are the little interactions. Like, people throw around the term future husband. There are two assumptions there that we will not unpack. But it boils down to, do I let this thing slide? Do I make waves? Do I say, well, actually, do I make the person acknowledge me as different? Do I have them affirm my humanity as different? And do I smile and take it? Do I stand up and say, no, I'm not? Is it a big deal? Do I let this pass? Because, once it's not that bad, but for a lifetime, day after day, it's like the wind wearing down a mountain, and sometimes there's nothing left. So, whenever this happens, which it does a lot, again, if you say something, you make it awkward for everybody, and you don't always want to be that person. I mean, for anything, really. It's like, I know people who don't want to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of a lecture because someone might look at them. So imagine that with hello, I'm not your preconception. I know the hair might give it away. So, when I was asked to name my presentation, I chose I Am Here. And as you can tell, I am. You're welcome. And you may not be able to tell when I walk in a room that I'm Jewish. There was a time when I walked into a room you couldn't tell I was gay. We went over this. But I'm still in that room. I'm not the constructed norm, and I exist in the same space as do many others. And, is it on us to carve out a space? Is it on us to do the work to do that? I dress the way I do because it's comfortable. And I'm comfortable in my Jewishness. I don't do any of this to walk around as a walking statement, even though we live in a world where that's what it is. So, my name is Eryn Nelken. My Hebrew name is Edith Yahudit Bat Yisrael. So let's break that down in English, all right? It's Edith, woman of Judea, daughter of Israel. I'm queer, I'm a woman, I'm Jewish, and I'm here. Thank you. I hope you got something out of this, and thank you for listening to me and my stories. So, any questions before I break the mic?
So you talked about some of your identities kind of separately. How do they interact with each other, or maybe even compete with one another at times?
I don't think they do, because for me personally, they've both always been intrinsic to who I am. I'm not a very religious person. The synagogue I go to has a giant gay flag out in the front. Way to go. Even when I lived in Israel for a bit, it wasn't a problem really there either, surprisingly. So the only, I think, similarity in this aspect is just how to pass as neither, and the similar experience, because once I figured out that I was bi, it's like, this feels familiar, I hope that helps. Any other questions?